All right, welcome. We're here today with the International Association of Near-Death Studies, the Charlotte, North Carolina chapter. And today we have a really special guest from Sydney, Australia. That's Dr. Nicole Gruel. And I met Nicole back when we were starting with INS, the International Association of Near-Death Studies, when we were studying the ISGO, the online sharing groups online. And we're both facilitators, and I helped with that, which was her brainchild, and got to know what a neat and fascinating person she is. So I just want to read a little bit of her bio, and then we're going to jump in and talk about her experiences. And as a near-death experiencer, someone who's had many spiritually transformative experiences, that how they view, how she views life, now what's going on, and I really love to get her thoughts. So introducing Dr. Nicole Gruel. She is a multiple near-death experiencer as well as an author, and she'll be talking about her books, and she has some links so you can get a copy of one of her books. And she's a speaker, and she's also a well-being coach, and she's a mom of a 3-year-old. And she's also, I put mover and shaker, I had to add that in there, as well as a samurai. We've got to hear about that. She has a long history of samurai. It's very cool. So she's going to be talking about where she, her experiences, how that affected her, what she was before, how she is now, as well as the after effects, how she integrated back into society, and with her awareness that she has, how she is helping lead other people to see the trueness of who they are in this world. So I am super proud to introduce Dr. Nicole Gruel.
Tamara, thank you so much for that beautiful, warm welcome and the invitation to connect with your Charlotte community. It's always a joy to be here, and thanks for being interested in my story.
Oh, are you kidding? You're awesome. You're very unique. I can't wait to hear it all.
So I guess I should dive in with a bit of the samurai stuff. Give you a bit of background. So that's on my mother's side. We discovered that we can go back as far as about 700 years with her lineage. Some marvelous person in the family was one of those folks who just loved getting into all of those, details of the genealogical line. So 700 years back down the matriarchal line. And what I discovered along that was it was actually the women who train when we think of samurais, we think of men, right? But it was actually the women in the homes who would do the foundational training for the young samurais, for the young male fighters that would go out. So they teach them all the fundamentals, the principles, the basics. And, aside from just going out there and being a devoted soldier in many ways, which is what they are, there's a deep code that runs through the samurai spirit, and it's about, loyalty, connection to something greater, and honor, personal honor and integrity. And, a samurai would rather stick a blade into their own belly and in their own life than give themselves over to a different power. So I think there's a theme that runs pretty deep in my side of the family. I can understand how that is there and how it plays a role today. And I'm really grateful to be connected to a lineage like that. I think it's something that helps ground me and stay centered in knowing, who I am and where I come from on one side. My father's side, so I'm going to give you guys a bit of background now before I jump into the experiences. So my father's side is completely different. French, comes from a family of, poets, artists, gardeners, much softer in ways. And rebels. So he was a rebel who couldn't stay in France anymore because of some trouble that he got into because of his beliefs. And so both my parents ended up finding themselves in Mexico. They were both, black sheep in a way and travelers. So you have a Japanese woman, a French man, meet in Mexico, have their love story, which is a whole other epic. And along I came at some point when they managed to get all the way over to Australia. And so, new immigrants to this foreign place where neither of them had this as their dominant language. And they both, as people, were very open, obviously, to the world and to different experiences. But what I came to understand was they were also very open as human beings to the extraordinary. My father, it turns out, had spent some time, many years traveling the world, but also several years meditating in a cave in India. And he passed away some time ago. And when I had my first near-death experience, actually, so I'll bring that in time. But I just wish, I wish I could have those conversations with him in living in person these days, to dive deep more into his journey and understand how that impacted, the environment that I grew up in. So they were both very fluid, open people. And I could say that I grew up in an environment that accepted the extraordinary as part of the ordinary. So I was pretty lucky like that. And when I was 7 years old, I was very curious as a kid. And at 7, I asked my dad, apparently, what God do I believe? And he gave me an answer that was to become both the biggest blessing and curse in my life. He said, darling, anything you want. And of course, at 7 years old, all I wanted was structure and guidance. I wanted the answer. This is, tell me my path and I'll follow it. And yet, of course, growing into an adult, I realized the gift of the freedom of choice. He was saying, go out into the world, inner world and outer world, and go and explore for yourself, go and find the answer. So my journey very naturally as a teenager and into my 20s was really a quest for that. I just had this hunger and urge to understand and find out what that source is for me and to connect to it directly. So we'll jump into the first near-death experience, which happened at age 14. And I was in New Zealand with a friend, and we were whitewater rafting. And we went down this spectacular river. I don't know if any of those, there might be some adrenaline junkies listening to this, but when you go whitewater rafting, it's such a thrill. And so we were heading down, and we went down this 10 meter, I'm not sure what that is in US terms, but it's big. It's a big drop.
Okay, we get it. Okay.
Yeah, big drop we went down. And we did it the first time, and it was so exciting that we decided to do it again. And of course, this time we're going down the river a second time, and the dark clouds are coming over, and it's feeling all a bit doo. And down we go. And of course, the boat tips this time around, and I get flung out of the boat. I'm not sure whether the others stayed in the boat or not. And I got thrown out and into the water. And this is a lot of water coming down a waterfall. And I had a swimmer's response, because I grew up a swimmer, which was to throw my arms out to try and swim. And that's the wrong response to have in that situation, because as I did that, the water actually pushed my entire body down deeper into the water. So I went down, and I landed in black water, as in there was no light. I had my eyes wide open. I was looking around. Everything was dark. And I actually didn't know which way was up or down. I had complete vertigo in the water. And so I knew in that moment there was no point trying to swim in any direction, because I didn't know which direction to go. And that was followed by a moment of sheer panic, knowing I was on my last breath. And that was followed straight after by absolute pure calm. It was like switch, just like that. And in that absolute calmness, in the black water that was around me, I saw a horizon of light open up. And I would liken it, if you've seen the movie Ghost, where Sam and, what's her name? Sam and Sally, is it? They have their reunion, they meet up at that horizon of light. It was exactly like that. I bawl my eyes every time I see that movie. So the horizon of light opens up, and I see coming towards me my grandmother from my Samari family, who at that time was living. She was in the living world, but this was her coming towards me in the water. And next to her was my first dog. And I was an only child, and so pets were like my siblings. And that dog had passed away. So I had a living and a non-living come towards me in this horizon of light. And you got to remember, I'm 14 years old, right? So I'm just thinking, oh, this is a bit strange. What are you doing here? And as they came towards me, then I heard a male voice right here say, Nicole, remember to breathe. And in that moment, something in the executive's brain kicked back in again and reminded me of the prep that we had that morning to curl up like a ball. So that kicked in, I curled up like a ball, and because I had a life jacket on, I came to the top of the water like a cork. And that was that. That was the end of that experience. And I went back to the hotel room with my friend. They plucked me out of the water. I was really lucky I came out when I did, because I was on my way into the mouth of the little cave, and, you know, white water, like it's gushing, it's pretty full on. And they picked me up and plucked me out. And had they not plucked me out, I would have had my death experience that day, not my near-death experience. So I'm grateful for that. So they plucked me out. We went back to the hotel, and, you know, we were 14, we were kids. We were just glad to be alive. And didn't think much of it at all. What I didn't realize at that time was the impact that that would have on, you know, up until this day, on the rest of my life. And, you know, many of you listening to this, I'm sure you've heard many accounts of near-death experiences. There are differences between when you have it as a kid, when you have these transformative experiences as a kid, and when you have them as an adult. You know, and as an adult, we kind of have these set ideas about how the world works and how big paradigms can be shifted. But as a kid, I was so open, and again, coming from a very open background and family, I had 100% acceptance. Like this, there was nothing abnormal about what had just happened. A horizon of light happened. I saw these two figures. Great, carry on. I didn't need to question it. I didn't need to integrate it. It just was what it was. And so off we went into the world, and that happened in a window where in a 6-month period, I have what I call my death initiation, or my initiation through death. So within that 6 month, I had my own near-death experience. I lost my father suddenly on the other side of the world. He had some kind of a heart attack, and we had had a bad relationship leading up towards then. He'd had issues with substances, and so I had a lot of rage and anger at the time when he died. So when that happened, there was a whole heap of unprocessed grief taking place. And his death started a domino effect. It actually, 2 family members close to him, his father and his grandmother, died within several months straight after him as well. Boom, boom, boom. So within 6 months, several family members died. And I think my grandfather on my, my Samari side passed away also. So as a 14-year-old, that much death and loss is pretty intense. Not to mention having almost lost my own life. Mm-hmm. And I think that all of that just kind of got packed away somewhere deep for a very long time, because I didn't have the emotional resource to deal with all of that loss at that point.
Can I ask you this? So your grandmother, you said that was living, but you saw her. Tell me your thoughts on that, because you had your pet that was deceased, but then it was your grandmother. So was it the soul of your grandmother, or what do you feel that was?
I feel that was her spirit that was there, which says to me that we can be in multiple places at once. I've met 2 other people who have had a living person, an aspect of a living person be with them during their near-death experience. My understanding is it's not that common. The answer, I've journeyed with this question for some time. The answer I come to is that she's one of my guides. You know, she's here to assist me as a grand teacher in terms of that gateway between life, how we live our life, and how we transition our life to wherever we go next. And her passing, her actual death that happened about 10 years later, was profound in my life. So profound, because the way the Japanese do it is you actually spend time with the body. So in the West, that's a bit like, oh, I don't know about that. But the body is in the room, you dream with them and journey. So it allowed me to really,
so you journey with the person and you experience their death with them, and you take it. Okay. Yeah. Like a kind of a different celebration of the passing.
Exactly. Okay. And, we did it in a Buddhist setting. And so it was very much about, there are times and gateways that they believe the spirit passes through different aspects from this life to wherever. And so each of those is marked very ceremonially. And of course, we had her in the room with us, in our ancestral room. All houses in Japan have an ancestral shrine. So that was the place where her body was resting in our house. And my mother and I, so 3 generations of women, we all slept in that same room together, which at first really weirded me out. But now
Yep.
understanding the process of grief and loss, I'm so grateful for that time, because it's one of the healthiest experiences I've ever had to be around the passing process. Unlike when you someone dies, you see them for a quick amount of time. You might see them for an hour at a funeral, if you even see them, and then it's all kind of wrapped up and gone, and everyone goes privately to deal with their grief. That's actually pretty traumatic on some levels.
Yeah.
And we're not given time to ride through the ups and downs of grief. So her passing enabled me to process all of that unpacked grief from all of those other losses that I'd had. So it was huge. It was really huge. And I still feel her present with me in many ways, in that samurai spirit. Yeah.
Well, to me, it sounds like a very sacred time, and very different the way, things are done in America.
Very much so. And same as I grew up in Australia, so I had never experienced anything like that either. And coming back and attending other funerals since, I feel for people. I wish that people could have that experience of journeying together through someone's transition. We have the capacity to do things so differently. We really do.
Well, you're a change agent. You're the head person of Agents of Awesome, so you can do it. And I'm all about it, because it's funny, a whole nother topic, but really funerals and grieving is changing so much. With the COVID and now, but everything, things are changing. We can do all that. We can grieve differently.
We can. And I think many people in that conversation are opening up to more conscious ways of transitioning and honoring illness, honoring death, not having to prolong life longer than necessary, and to do it in a way that's a celebration. So I celebrate that. I think that's a really healthy thing that we can do for each other. So that was one big experience as a teen. And so, I journeyed then kind of through my 20s, and maybe that experience was a big part of the reason I kind of had this openness, and I wanted, more connection with source directly. And I was very driven by finding purpose. Why am I here? Why am I here? What do I want to do with the time that I'm here, and how can I serve? I was so compelled to answer those questions, and that led me into many industries. I was teaching for some time. I did a lot of volunteer work in different sectors, and traveled very widely, and worked with all kinds of international development and humanitarian areas, because I kept asking that question of how can I make the best use of my time and be of service to other human beings in meaningful ways. So fast forward now to I'll share 3 big experiences in total. And, keep in mind, and this is typical for folks who've had these big spiritually transformative experiences, I'm sure many of you listening will relate, that they can be sprinkled in between with a whole array of other, wow moments as well. So I'm kind of skipping over a lot of those, just to give you the biggies. And so a second big one that happened was now when I was turning 30. And for the astrologers out there, I think, is this the time of the Saturn return or something? There's some big things that go on around that time. But for me, what was happening was, at this point, I had trained as a counselor. I worked as a teacher, trained as a counselor and a coach, and I had a small healing center. And there were other therapists working there. And so I was immersed in all of these amazing therapies that were out there, quite novel things, and really enjoying all of that. And I loved working with clients and going into stories, but I could not handle the business side of things. That's not been my forte and not my preference. And so I decided to close things down. I had a strong visceral experience one day of going to the elevator. I put my finger out to press the button up, and my whole body said no. And I knew that if I pursued it any further, I'd get myself into trouble. I'd get quite sick. So I stopped. So I shut down things in my external world, and it triggered some kind of an internal experience. I'd also come back from some time working in Bangladesh as a volunteer teacher, which was a really trying time on many levels. So I was kind of broken in many ways, and I needed to recover. So I went into a spontaneous experience for 3 days of ordinary and non-ordinary states of consciousness. What you would see from the outside is a woman lying on a couch. I was simply lying there and sweating up a storm and had a big fever. And my mother actually said, please, let's go to the hospital. But having done a lot of psycho-spiritual work, I understood that there was something important that was taking place, and I just needed to be with the process. So, and I'm glad I didn't sign myself into a psychiatric, office at that time either, because I probably would have walked out with a diagnosis of some point. When I hear stories of spiritual emergencies that go on, I think that's what was happening at that moment. So 3 days of lying on this couch, and it triggered a spontaneous experience that I would call a combination between a Kundalini clearing. There was a clearing through my whole system, which is kind of like an upward journey in many ways, but there was also a deep downward journey that was quite shamanic in flavor. So it involved my psyche naturally going into my deep roots down my left foot and my right foot, and going into ancestry and understanding, meeting, historical people in my family, and addressing things in my own DNA that were not corrected at that point in time, or the stories that had been carried through and created issues that I was carrying in my system at this time. Again, no one was guiding me through this process. This was like this spontaneous thing that I just had to follow. My consciousness that could hold on was just following the process. So there was a lot of that. There had been, issues in the past around, personal violation and abuse that needed to be cleared, that was sitting in my own system. And so that had to happen. And a lot of shadow work, essentially. I talk about this time as, I liken it to walking through molasses. It was thick, it was icky, it was difficult. It took every part of me to go through it. And yet it had to happen because it was simply the right time. Through this 3 days, what happened towards the end was like a really rapid peeling of an onion, where each layer of the onion was a layer of my identity or my being. And so right towards the very end, that process sped up very fast, to the point where I was grasping onto pieces of, my name is Nicole. That got ripped away. I am a girl on a couch. That got ripped away. I was grasping onto anything. And then finally there was nothing. And the only thing that was left was like as big as this, a pinprick of light.
Wow.
That was it. One pinprick of light and nothingness. And it was brutal, don't get me wrong. It wasn't like this kind of hallelujah moment. It was like this quite atrocious ripping away of everything I knew myself to be. It was very ungrounding. But when that pinprick of light came, and this is why I call this a near-death-like experience, because every part of who I knew myself to be died in that moment. I didn't go through a physical death, but I went through an identity death, an ego level death. Mm-hmm. And from that moment, there was the same peace that I'd had with the horizon of light, that same light. And there was also a knowing in that moment that this is all that I am. I'm nothing more. I'm nothing less than this pinprick of light. And from this, everything that I create is a game that I get to participate in. It's a game that they're just symbols and patterns and archetypal patterns that we get to create and enjoy. And I tell you what, that was the biggest freedom releasing moment for me, because it was just like, okay, how do we want to play this game? How do we want to play it?
So what did you decide in that moment? Because you basically, did you get to the point where you weren't male, you weren't female, you just were?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you decide? I can do anything. So what's it going to be? Where did you go from there?
Yeah, well, from there, things started getting really fun. I started to understand co-creation, and to really be led by that pulse, that core life pulse. And is what I'm doing right now in alignment with that pulse or not? And so it was a real years of experimentation after that, in creating, certain offerings, how I want to do business, where do I want to go with things, what kinds of relationships do I want to have, all of the shapes, you know, that are around me in my life, these are things that I get to actively create and participate in. So it's a very grounding thing to have, you know. I call it my experience of a core essence. And I know that if I am in connection with that, everything's going to work out. And it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's enabled me a massive level of detachment from things. Not to say that I'm totally detached. I'm not. I have loving family. I have a whole heap of things that I'm very attached to. And it helps with knowing that ultimately, you know, might not take any of it with us anyway. So what's really important in all of that? So it had a lot of the same ahas as a classic near-death experience.
And you were in your 30s?
That was just at the time I was turning about 30. Wow. Yeah.
That's young to get such an epiphany.
Yeah, well, mind you, I'd spent a lot of time in ashrams. You know, I was very dedicated on a yogic path. I dove pretty deep into some wisdom traditions, and I was so dedicated. And again, because that came from this genuine desire to know how to be of service in the world. And because I'd, you know, gone into the studies in some of those things, it was just clear to me what was happening. A lot of the language, I mean, the way that I'm telling you about it now, I couldn't have explained it like this at the time. Right? That's the beauty of processing and integration afterwards. We start to get language for what happened to us.
Yes. It was just like a download and experience, it sounds like.
Yeah, and a total clearing away, a total clearing of things to open up the way and say, okay, what's now and what's next?
Wow. Okay, that's exciting. So there's one more pivotal.
And there's one more, yeah. And so I guess where that led me from that experience was knowing how important these experiences can be to the experiencer. I wanted to be in service to helping people, you know, to validate their experiences and to make the most of the wisdom that comes out of them. Because for me, once you get connected to that space, there are so many answers within it that can guide us in this very complex human journey. So I hold these experiences very sacred and important, and I want to honor them in others as well, because I think collectively we learn from them. So that led me down a path. I'm a bit of a nerd and I love study. So that led me, you know, I've had the experience, a path that led me down a very academic path. And I ended up pursuing a master's in transpersonal psychology and then a PhD in the same area. And, you know, when I was a kid, I totally revered Deepak Chopra. He was like this medical doctor that made sense to me. He actually made sense when in a world that often didn't make sense. And I think that must have planted a seed in me that, like, I want to be like him one day. So although I didn't go down the medicine path, it was something about understanding how to play the game, that when you have certain credentials, it enables a certain, you know, level of respect in society around particular conversations. And so it lends respect to the conversation around spiritually transformative experiences, which I know from so many people can be considered totally woo or fringe or go hang out with the unicorns and fairies, and it's not taken seriously.
Right. I like unicorns. That's my animal spirit.
I love rainbows, you know.
Rainbows, unicorns, mermaids, all together. It's great.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So it's a way of bringing credibility, you know, to this field of beautiful experiences, and not always beautiful, but, you know, profound experiences, let's say. So I went down that pathway, and, you know, so I'm kind of trotting my path, and then I have the blessing of a child come into my life. And it's funny because I guess the universe thought I needed a refresher experience. I was so deeply immersed in working with experiencers by this point, and, you know, near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative experiences, people having Kundalini awakenings, folks communing with aliens, people doing plant medicine. I mean, you name it, we've kind of, you know, we cover the gamut. And so I was very deep into that world, but it had been a while since I'd had a big one myself. You know, again, I'd had all of these little small ones interspersed. So here I was with the birthing experience, and without going into too many of the details, in a nutshell, it was 90 hours, 90, from when my waters broke naturally to when she finally came out. So that's about 3 days. And I'm a very natural kind of person, so I wanted this to happen as naturally as possible. As a mama, I had my natural plan and all of my, you know, my visioning and blah, blah, blah. And of course, this was not the birth that I got in the end. And so after the 90 hours, anyway, I finally end up in the hospital because it's been a very long time. I'm getting exhausted. The doctors are getting very concerned that there might be issues with the child. So in we go, and in the midst of things, I get convinced that it's a good idea to have an injection of Pitocin, which is the hormone that they put into ladies to speed things along. I still to this day don't think that stuff should be in a woman's body. It was the most unnatural thing that I've ever experienced, and as soon as it came in, things went totally pear-shaped. They lost track of the baby's heartbeat and they started to panic. Then they gave me the gas, right? And that was the best moment ever to have the happy gas. So I'd had no painkillers through this time, and I get on the happy gas, and they couldn't actually take it away from me. I was like, you know. And something about the exhaustion and the craziness and the substance triggered another experience for me. So one part of my consciousness was in the birthing suite with all the craziness that happens in a birthing suite. And another part of my consciousness simultaneously went right back to the exact same horizon of light that I was in many, many years ago. The exact same place. Only, of course, this time I knew exactly where I was. And I could still muster some language. And I believe I said to my family in the room, I think I'm having a near-death experience and one of us might not make it, and it's going to be okay.
Wow.
So there I am at the horizon of light, and that part of my consciousness that was there was laughing hysterically at the whole drama and the scene and all the craziness that had played out until that point, because that part of me, knew that everything was perfect. It was exactly meant to be like this. And it flushed away all of those other bits of me that, no, I want it this way or that, right? 1,000 other voices. And so I knew in that moment that we were supposed to have a cesarean, which is the one thing, any intervention like that, I had completely avoided and been vehemently against. And I just knew in that moment, this is exactly what we need to do. So I turned to the midwife, I tell her this is what we're going to do. And for those of you familiar with this process, things happen very fast from that point when you make that decision. So 1 hour later, you know, I have my child in my arms at 3:33 p.m. And the interesting thing about all of that was, and I also had a vision in that moment with this child that, and you know, and we were both okay. The child was okay and I was okay. But I had a vision in that moment that we would be talking about this in the future, that I would be sharing this story. I saw myself on stage talking about these experiences, and I knew that there was something about that would connect, particularly with women through these birthing experiences, and that, you know, it needed to be shared. It also gave me total acceptance of a scenario that I hadn't wanted, and a situation that could have otherwise been quite traumatic. There are so many mamas that come out of hospital highly traumatized, but so exhausted, and you just get into motherhood that you don't really process that experience. So I'm grateful to it for that as well, because I walked out of that hospital baggage free from it, or spiritually baggage free.
Right.
And able to carry on. So those were kind of the three biggies that have punctuated a flow in between. And where does that all lead? You know, again, I was already on that path of wanting to honor stories of experiencers, and, you know, what are people's gifts and how do you bring them forth? And once I'd understood the nature of these spiritual experiences and how they transform us, my study was in the area of how our personalities are in many ways enhanced. We have certain buttons turned on or gifts turned up as a result of these experiences. So, you know, the work now is very much about walking with people through accepting that, understanding that, as well as dealing with the stuff that arises. You know, the more we walk into the gifts that we have and the light that we are, the more all of that other stuff comes up as well, to the old patterns, etc., and the challenges.
Right.
And of course, we have to meet the world at the coalface too. And so there's no shortages of conflict points in terms of, you know, relationships, things happening in the world, the problems that we care about and what we want to address. So it's very much led down that path. And, you know, Tamara, you've mentioned Agents of Awesome. So that's who I call an Agent of Awesome. It's someone who has been through or is going through awakening experiences of some kind. And when I say awakening experiences, these are spiritually transformative experiences that expand our consciousness, that bring us into a greater sense of who we are and what we're doing here. So people who have gone through that or are going through that and they feel it in their bones, like I'm here to serve purposefully in some way. Maybe I know what that is, maybe I don't know what that is. So, you know, helping to get connected to that. And then how to be here on this planet at this time when the world is burning in so many ways, and to show up, you know, to not bury our head in the sand, or spiritually check out to some place, or you know,
you are nailing it. That is,
but to just address it and be real, you know, with ourselves and with others and with the issues, because we're here now. You know, we talked about this earlier. We chose this on some level.
Oh, right? Man, sister, you are hitting it. I mean, I love how you said, show up now, be here, be your authentic self. And, you know, part of the Agents of Awesome, which you can be a part of that, right? When you go on the, I think you're on Facebook.
Yeah. Anyone on Facebook can absolutely be a part of that.
And be a part of it. And there's questions that Nicole asks every day. You just, you know, you'll Agents of Awesome. And then, you know, yes, you'll, you know, bring in the group, but questions that are fun, but are thought-provoking. And that makes, I think what it does is it brings you to your higher self of who you are. What I like what you're doing is it's such a kind, generous thing, is that you're bringing, I feel, my perspective, that you're bringing people on this journey with you to, let's play this game together. Hey, how about let's make it a better world? You're super special. Let's find out how special you are. Let's find out how special we are together. Let's try to make this a better place. So it's done in a playful way, but it's also very introspective. So to me, it's not just, I think with this, what you're putting together, this program, it's not just about people that have, in my opinion, a spiritually transformative experience, but people that are waking up.
Yeah.
And what do they do with that? And you have been such an amazing spiritual leader to guide people. And you know, I don't know, in my opinion, there's a lot of lost people now. They're very confused. And look, I get it. You know, every day it's like, okay, today's a new day. What's today hold? Wow, didn't look like yesterday. So, but the thing is that I love that, you know, in the near-death experiences, that whatever is going on, like you said, even I love when you're talking about the birth experience and about how you had the laughing gas and laughing, but that you knew everything was going to be okay. And so there's somehow a universal order to things, even in the chaos. And there's an underflowing current within us, that this life force. And I think you're really you're trying to tap into that with each person.
Yeah, well, you've nailed Agents of Awesome. I mean, that's really how we operate. And you're right. I love to infuse things with just a sense of joy and wonder and delight, because boy, life is serious, isn't it? It's so easy to get stuff, and you know, yeah. I
get tired of adulting sometimes. You know, I came up with a new name for you. I think you should be a transformer. It's got kind of like that little Japanese thing going on, it's a little samurai, and that's kind of what you're doing, right? You're helping transform people into the better version of who they should be. So
Thank you. Thank you. I love that. I love
the
that.
transformer, the spiritual transformer. So, and yours can have you can make yours a little girly if you want. Put angel wings in the back. So, tell us a little bit about also, you know, those experiences. And obviously, you're very introspective and about life, why I'm here. Right now, you know, from your point of view, from your heart, you know, with the COVID, there's unrest globally that's going on and so forth. How are you perceiving this? And obviously we chose to be here now. How do you think that we can all be a positive influence and help each other? How do you feel like, because you're doing that. So I would like to hear from you on this.
Yeah, I think one of the gifts of these spiritually transformative and near-death like experiences that we can have, at least for me, is an understanding of how short life is. It's so short, it's so precious. And we even don't need these experiences. We just, you know, when we lose someone near and dear to us in our life, there it is, right? It just,
Right.
we can see a whole lifetime in a moment. And that might be a kind of drastic way to approach the world. And yet for me, it makes things really simple, super simple. You know,
No,
life
I'm
is
kind of with
short.
you. I'm kind of with
Yeah.
you.
Life
It's
is
pretty
short. Life is
correct.
precious. And, you know, so how do we make the most of the time that we've been given? How, because we don't know, none of us really know how long that is.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe some of you do in this community. I don't know. I don't know for myself how
No,
long
I
that
don't want to
is.
know. No,
Savvy ones here,
no, I
but
want to know, like, look, you know, what do I need to do so we can just move on with this game? Okay. I mean, there's a
right.
better game to play here. So,
And I think perspective is a huge part of that. What paradigm and what story are we telling ourselves? Where are we operating from? So there's any number of narratives that we can engage at this point in time in terms of what's going on the planet right now. And each of those narratives also has emotional threads and themes to them as well. You know, some of them, they're all vibrational. So some of them are tapped into the vibration of love and greater consciousness and unity.
yeah,
Great.
yeah,
Some of them are tapped into anxiety and fear and, you know, trepidation about things. Okay. I'm not judging those narratives. They are actual narratives playing out. And the powerful thing that we get to do is, you know, I like to think of us humans as radio stations, and we can, you know,
yes, correct. I do too.
we have choice, right? We actually, and some of us don't know this, but I'm sure many here listening do, we have choice and agency to actually choose which radio station we want to tap into. And the thing is, when we have these spiritually transformative experiences, we actually have the capacity, I've found, to tune into more of those radio stations because we become more susceptible and more open to different frequencies. So you get your highly sensitive beings, for example, and you know, you get some folks who don't know how to turn the radio stations off and they just get bombarded and it's all a bit too much. And so that's a whole other journey you got to navigate as well. So what narrative, what radio station do you want to choose into? Because there's a lot of choice out there. Now, is one of them the correct one and the truth with a greater T? I don't know. I honestly have no idea about this, you know, but I feel that each person can know what the truth is for themselves as an experiencer as they navigate that pathway. And so my mission, you know, what I'm driven by, and like this Agents of Awesome is, you know, okay, what do you want to tune into? Like, what is this unique gift and package that you are in your configuration? The stars have been lovemaking for billions of years to make you as this gorgeous little sparkling things that you are at this moment in time in your unique configuration with your fingerprints and your personality and your wiring.
Yeah.
I don't poo-poo the personality at all or the ego. I actually think these are highly sophisticated structures that can be very helpful in helping us navigate each other. Like we need our personalities and a structure in order to have these conversations now and navigate this world and have a job or, you know, do whatever the basics. And I think that that's a really exciting place to come from as well, because it's also where our uniqueness translates out into the world. That's what makes us exciting. Like, if we were all the same bland flavor, what's the point of it all? You know, so the diversity for me is the exciting part.
Right.
And in that, we all can bring something different to the table. Like 100 of us could get together and all be passionate about the same issue, let's say plastic bags and pollution. And we all want to address that one thing because we really, you know, are so devastated by seeing animals in the ocean, you know, being destroyed by this. Those 100 people are all going to have different things that they can offer in a multi-layered solution to address something. And this is why I'm just so over this idea of competition. For me, it's just, we got to get on with collaboration because we all have something to bring. And the quicker we can get out of this sense of it's my way or the highway, you know, or I'm right, the faster we can just be a bit more humble with, here's what I can bring to the table. How can we work together because we both care about X? Then we can get stuff done, you know, we can really get stuff done. And there's no shortage of stuff to be doing on our planet right now.
Well, I nominate you as Planet Earth spokesperson. No, seriously. You know what it has to do, everybody, to me, it's a very a down-tone game when you're pitting people against one another, when in reality that we're all connected. And you see that, you know, through the near-death experience of, you know, a lot of people, but that, you know, we are brothers and sisters and we are one race, the human race. And we, you know, it's really about kindness and humility and love. And yeah, it seems so easy, but it's not so easy. Apparently, it's not so easy.
Absolutely. And, you know, we as a species, I think, could do with a whole heap more maturity. We could grow up. This planet, this amazing home that we have the privilege to inhabit, could wipe us out like that in an instant. You know, I mean, right now, this is due to, you know, bacterial forces. You know, these are materials that are actually natural, right? Unless, of course, depending on other narratives that are out there that they're constructed. But you get the point.
Yeah, well, it could. Yeah, there's a lot that could go on.
There's a lot of narratives.
There's a lot that could go on. Yeah.
So without jumping down any of the rabbit hole narratives, you know, the point being that this planet is going to be fine without us humans. We don't like the sound of that, but this planet would probably be way better off without us. We are parasitic on our home, right? On our host. We are parasitic. We are sucking the life force out of this beautiful planet. And so we are on a collective suicide mission. We are the only ones responsible for doing this to ourselves right now. And so this planet is still tolerating us. It might not for much longer. And at some point, who knows, it could all, you know, vanish in an instant because that's what happens in the nature of the cosmos as well. So we have an opportunity as a species right now to grow up a little bit and do life on this planet better. And what keeps me excited and motivated and not, you know, down in the dumps and disheartened about all the things going on right now is I feel in my bones that in this lifetime, like within my lifetime and everyone here, our lifetime, we can see these major changes happen because we already know how to do things better. There are already living examples of pockets of communities who are doing it way better. And so and of course, our ancient civilizations and cultures and our animistic natural societies, our indigenous peoples, the wisdom has already been there for a long time in terms of how we do life better on this planet and understand. So I'm not saying we have to, you know, go back into medieval times in any way at all. I'm saying we have to grow up and use the technologies that we've been very clever with and created and move forward in sustainable ways that are healthy to each other. I mean, you know, the rates of suicide and antidepressants, people are checking out willingly off the planet, right? Willingly, they don't want to be here. Now, that's a problem. That should indicate that something very wrong is taking place.
Right. I totally agree. So how do you recommend to people that are, I mean, this is a real topic. I'm going to address it, you know, that the suicide, the feeling of lost. what is it, something that you can say to ground them to the feeling of importance on this planet now?
Yeah, two things. One, be you, get connected to yourself, right? So find that
Yeah.
anchor, that center within yourself, because no one else can find that for you. And the second piece is to link in with purpose. It doesn't have to be some big grand thing in the world,
Right.
but to find little moments, mini moments in the day that give you a sense of purpose and joyful connection. So if that's a good deed, if that's sitting down and having a cuppa with somebody, and you sit down, you enjoy a cup of the conversation, and you just take that moment and you've authentically connected. If you have a pet in your life that gives you great joy, then spend time with that, or be with the plants, or whatever it is, right? Or write something or read something meaningful. But connecting with others is one of the fastest ways that we can get out of ourselves and the stuff that's going on for us. So when we can meaningfully be with another person, because everyone's got something in their life that, there are so many pains out there that, people might present well on the outside, but if you dig a little deeper under those layers, there's no shortage of things where people might need assistance. People might need just a listening ear.
Yeah.
People might just need you to be present and hold a hand and not say anything for some
Wow.
time.
I agree with you. I agree. I was texting on something, and there was a personality, a known person, and they were thinking of suicide. And I'm thinking, I just talked to her, as a friend, and you don't realize, but there are some people that, there's no shame in being human. There's no shame, and you should never be embarrassed with your feelings. For some reason, we decided that our feelings aren't so good, but they're just part of being human. And I do love this format. I love the fact that we can connect with people across the world, like you in Sydney, Australia, and have a real heart to heart. And, hopefully people that see this and that see this, episode of you speaking, that they will see what matters to them. I find it's the simple things. I find that it's, a smile on someone's face, petting my dog, letting my feet walk through the grass, feeling connected to, the earth. It's, I'm readjusting my importances in life. And beforehand, I realized, why was I running so many errands, going here and there, like a little busy bee? What was so freaking important? And so now I'm looking at what is important, and it's the essence of me being here now, and through whatever I feel like, the divine, the creator is working through me. And I'm still trying to connect with that. But it's a lot more simple than I thought. I don't know why as humans like to overcomplicate things.
But we do, don't we? Because we're complex creatures. We love complexity. It's exciting, right? And
it's very exciting.
Life can be pretty simple. And as we strip back, it creates space, is what it does. We're so good at all being busy. It's like you ask someone, how you doing? Oh yeah, I'm really busy. As if that's a good thing, and maybe it is, but is it the type of busy that you want to be? We don't have to be busy, right? Yeah. And it's something you were touching on there, this pandemic.
Yes.
I think this is one of the mixed blessings of this time. It is really getting people to reconnect with values. What is important to me? Because we've had all kinds of gratifications and these things that we have around us to keep our attention. They just got stripped away, right? Like that.
Right.
So, okay.
Right.
So now that I don't have those, what do I want to do? And what really matters to me? And particularly when we humans are being faced with questions around mortality, which is what this pandemic's doing,
yes.
Then it forces those questions as well. There is a collective shock and grief and processing that is taking place. And even if we haven't lost people directly, personally to us, or been directly affected, and many people here might have been, but even if we haven't been, we are sensitive. We're linked into each other, even if it's unconsciously. And so all of us on some level is processing this greater thing that is taking place. So it taps back into what is important to me. How do we want to operate moving forward? We've actually been given this incredible time where, without the global travel and the movements and, you know, the busyness that we've all become so wrapped up in, things have quietened in so many ways. And so it's this pregnant pause right now. Even though it's a little distressing the way the pregnant pause is taking place, there's nonetheless a pregnant pause. And so how is it, as we start to reintroduce busyness in our lives and activity, what are the directions that we want to extend ourselves in? Do we want to go back to exactly how we were? Because we can. You know, old habits are very, very tantalizing and comfortable. It's very easy to go that way. Or maybe we've discovered things about ourselves during this period that we're integrating now, we're adapting, and we want to move more towards that. So this is, who knows when we're going to get another moment like this. So I really sincerely hope that the vast majority of people take the good that we can from this and step forward in a way that is going to be more life-giving.
You know, it's funny. It's forced people to do one simple thing, to stop and just look around what's around them, whether it's their family, whatever is around them, and really get into a different state of gratitude and to just see where they are and see who they are. And some people that might be uncomfortable, but I do think this is an opportunity to recalibrate. I don't think I wanted to go back the way it was. I just don't. I think that this time, you said the pregnant pause, but it has given us time to reflect on maybe just personally our own habits and you know, what serves us best. And I think that I can tell you that I wasn't kind to myself, and I'm learning to be kinder to myself and in terms of more quiet time that I need that I never really gave before. And things aren't, and also the sense of importance. Things aren't that important. They can always wait a little bit.
Yeah, I think those are two key things there. Kindness to self and others, which is actually very simple, but can be hard as a practice, a living practice. Yeah, that gentleness.
Yeah.
Key things there. Yep.
I agree, that gentleness. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't I go ahead and I open it up for any questions about anything? You're amazing. And you know, if people don't have questions, we can actually, I can have you go into Nicole about maybe some questions that you normally would ask on your Agents of Awesome about just some introspective things, because they're fun. They're just fun things to think about. So I'm going to go ahead and what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute, but if you have a question, you can, okay, let me get you in full view here. You can raise your hand by your hand. There's like a little raise hand thing. You can do that. Or you can actually put your hand up there if you would like to do that. So if anyone has any questions for us, or just if you'd like to make a comment on everything we've been talking about, that's cool too. So, so fire away, whoever's got a question. Okay. And unmute yourself, because I did unmute everybody if you did have a question. And there should be a hand raising thing on here too. And I think what I'm going to do is, do you want this part recorded? If not, I can cut it off, or we can keep going. It doesn't matter to me. It's not like it's confidential. Are y'all cool with that?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay, good. All right. So who's got a question or comment about what we've been speaking about?
I do.
Okay, go for it, Amy.
Of course, I always have questions.
There you go.
I tried to join the group. One of the questions I have is, do you work with all different religions, Dr. Gruel?
Yeah, absolutely. All faith paths are welcome.
Yeah, because I noticed that you did not specifically center in on any type of religion I assume that's because you work with a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that it all centers in on one higher being or not?
No, not necessarily. I honor each person and the way they experience the world and truth for them.
Okay.
So I see things as very diverse, and I learn every day, and I get surprised constantly by people. We are such diverse creatures, and we all see the world in such incredibly different ways that I haven't yet found any one model to impose on people that works for everyone, nor do I
and
want
I don't
to.
think so either, to some extent. I think we're all given a path, and we, like you said, there's so many different ways that you can go. I've discovered my path actually, but I do feel like my experiences that I've had have centered in on one specific path, but I'm always open to listening to everything because we are human beings, and who's to say who has the right path? You just have to go with where your heart says.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all hold pieces of it, and we can all learn from each other. And it's a beautiful thing in my mind that there are so many different pathways out there. We're in this incredible time on the planet where we have so much available to us that we get to pick and choose. And of course, we all grew up in a consumeristic society, so we like shopping and having choice, and we're living in a spiritual marketplace right now.
One other
A
question.
spiritual marketplace. I like that. That's funny.
I have one thing. Can you speak to spirit guides and what you have noticed from talking to all the different varied people? Certainly you're not the only person I've heard mention spirit guides. From your research with working with a lot of different people, is that a constant theme?
Nothing is a constant theme, Amy.
Really? Okay.
There are many themes. There are definitely many themes, but again, I haven't found anything that I would say is an ultimate truth to people. So spirit guides from the many people I speak with is something that a lot of people experience, but not everybody. And so for some, it's incredibly strong for them. Some people to the point where it's like real people in the room, physical people, as real as you or I are. Some people have it at that level of experience. Others have it as, I might hear something. They have their clairs switched on, right? Their clairaudience, their clairsentience. So they're those skills where they're able to tap in and receive guidance. And the way that they might talk about it is by higher spirits, guides, etc. Again, that's language that we're putting on something that is an experience, right? Because we humans, we only have language when we're limited. Some people might experience a prompting. I just felt, and they might call it intuition, or I felt guided to go in that way. Or some people are drawn to cards, for example, and they go through the cards, and so they might have something physical that is a tool that enables them to communicate with something that they feel is beyond themselves. So I find that languaging of, higher whatever, anything hierarchical like that, or guides, again, that's a form of language. And we also have to understand culture. There are, in the Western culture, that is more likely to come up than perhaps in Eastern cultures or some of the other places. And so when we look into history and, Christianity and Judaism, etc., there is language that has been embedded in sacred books and codes that has been translated down that comes into the modern world today. And often people use this language without understanding where the language actually comes from. And this is a really common thing too that happens in the near-death experience community. For any of those of you that have jumped onto the forums, you might very well see these conversations that come up between heaven and hell constantly, and these judgments between, heaven and hell, as though that's the only choice. And, from my experience with the people I work with, that's, again, one narrative. That's a narrative that people can engage with. There are so many other narratives out there, but we're all kind of in our own cultural bubbles. And until we branch out of our own cultural bubble and break that down a little bit and understand our own conditioning and our own paradigm, it can be really hard to even fathom that there are other ways of languaging these things out there. And I'm not saying that it's wrong when people do that. Again, we're operating with the language and the paradigm that we have, and that's perfectly fine, because if it makes sense to that person, each person to their own path.
Right.
Each to their own path. Yeah.
Right. Which brings us kind of into multiverses. That's what are your thoughts on multiverses, different dimensions?
Well, aren't they interesting?
I'm like, can I just go to one of them right now? Okay. No, I'm here. I'm present. I really am.
Yeah, I guess my feeling on that is anything is possible. You know, one of the conversations that constantly stretches me is folks who have had ET experiences.
Yeah.
This has not been my experience. I've had no direct, that I'm consciously aware of, experience like this, but I speak with many experiencers where this is exactly what they've gone through. And again, it can be they've met alien beings as real as you or I in this moment, through to all the way of, you know, third eye connections and people who feel like they were not born of this planet and they feel they're hybrid. Now, I'm not here to judge anyone and say that's true or not, or you're crazy or not. I'm here to say, wow, what an incredible experience, and what can you take from that in order to apply in this lifetime. And it's the same thing with conversations about past life experiences. I'm open to the fact that past lives exist. Again, for me personally, I've had moments where I've had stuff arisen. Whether I hold that as true or not as an actual life is a conversation I'm having with myself. But it doesn't mean I'm not open to understanding that this is an actuality in the world that people engage with. So I think having a beginner's mind in all of this is actually really useful, because we can never know someone else's truth. We can never know. But what we can do is just be open and listen to their experience and kind of go, wow, that's cool. What do you want to share with me about that?
Well, you know, it's funny, like children, they have a natural curiosity and they don't judge each other for that. So, you know, there are people at different points of understanding and spirituality, and you can't blame someone or whatever, or for wherever they are. They're wherever they are. So I think that anyone that has a natural curiosity is healthy.
Absolutely. I think judgment is very unhelpful on this path for ourselves and for other people. You know, the moment we bring that in, and look, that's part of our natural mind mechanism and how we operate too. So to not even judge ourselves when that's happening, but just to be aware, you know, oh, there it is again, you know, there's my way of thinking about that, or no, there's me telling them they're wrong, or they don't understand how the world really works. You know, to just have an awareness that that's what's going on with me right now. What is it about what they've said that might be triggering me in this moment? Why am I having such a strong reaction to something that they've said? So that attitude of curiosity, I think, is an incredibly healthy and awakened way of walking the world. We can be innocent like kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hi, Jeff. I see your picture there. Does anybody else have a comment or question? Kind of chime in on things. We got a couple more minutes. Yes, no? Let me see here. Let me go through here. All right, let me scroll through here. All right.
It's cool hanging out with
I
you
do.
all.
I do,
Hi,
actually.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Nicole.
So when you were discussing the 3 days that you were on the couch and you were having this sweep, you were having an upward sweep and a downward sweep as well. Integrating that, how easy or how difficult and how long was it for you to fully integrate that experience? I know you said there were just you leaving, you know, your name, your, you know, just, and so I don't know that I've had a full sweep before, but I have had experiences where it's almost as if you feel like the rug's been pulled out from underneath you, and you can get very ungrounded, and that sort of thing in it. But for you, in processing those 3 days, I mean, obviously there was a lot going on. You have fever, this, that. Some people, they can be in that kind of emergency situation for a long time. How were you able to integrate that healthily, and what was your how long did it take you? And you still may be integrating that.
Yeah, it's a great conversation. Integration is such an important piece. You know, we can get so caught up on what the experience was and get excited about that, but it's the integration part, right, that's really actually in my mind far more important.
Yes.
So there's a short-term integration and a long-term integration. So after an emergence experience / emergency, which that one was 3 acute days, and it was a very physical thing that was happening as well as a psycho-spiritual thing. So physically, my body had to recover from, you know, high fevers in that time. But psycho-spiritually, I was pretty well equipped by the time that happened, because I understood I was going through a process that was important. I'd kind of done enough work to have some frameworks around what was happening. So I moved into action. That was one of my fastest ways of integrating was, okay, so this has happened. Now, how do I take those steps forward? I tend to be a naturally introspective person. So my deep processing can take place. And if I need time and space to do that, I will. But for me, the greatest challenge is stepping out into action in the world. But I know myself well enough to know that when I do, even if it's one step forward in the direction that I'm feeling prompted, magic starts to happen when I do that. So I started applying that again, because I had trained in counseling and coaching at that point, to start putting it back into that. But it was because my values had kind of been realigned at that point. It was, how do I want to do that again, but do it differently? How can I apply myself better in a way where I'm not going to exhaust myself or get into that? I don't want that to happen again. That was pretty unpleasant. So how do I take care of me and take the wisdom of that experience, that knowing that this can be playful, this can be light, that at my core essence, this is a really beautiful experience. How can I stay connected to that and infuse that in the actions in my life? So that was how the short-term integration moved into the long-term. And in the end, I think it was a couple of years later, I actually wrote a book about it called Dancing with Dragons. I didn't have the intention at the time when I was writing that it was going to be a book. So I was studying transpersonal psychology, and we had an exercise. We were given an exercise, which is to write your spiritual autobiography. And I started and I did the assignment, which was 10 pages, and I couldn't stop. Wow. I just could not stop. That exercise awoke something in me to keep going. And that became a 3-month camping. Well, I started writing it at home. I just went into this deep, I'm very introverted in many ways. So I just went into my deep cave space and I started moving that through and getting that story out. And I'm also quite structural. So I started explaining it through the chakras as I was going, like a shadow side of the chakras journey. But interestingly, and it wrote itself chronologically. And when I got to the heart, I got stuck in my writing process. So I packed everything in my car. I went on a camping trip. I isolated myself. There was the ocean, bushes, and kangaroos. That's where I was. It was actually, in hindsight, a pretty stupid and dangerous thing to do, because I wasn't thinking as a single woman of safety in this bush experience. Anything could have happened out there. I was not safe, but I just had to, I was so in my process, and I just kept writing and carrying on with the rest of it. And then it moved, from the heart onwards through the chakras. And in writing that book, it's so interesting. That was a whole other layer of integration, because, and this is when I finally understood the power of writing. I was putting into words my experiences. And when you do that, those of you that are writers, you might have experienced this too. It's like all that stuff that's been in you is suddenly outside of you. It's placed somewhere into a structure, and it's like you can hold it. And I lost, weight-wise, I lost about 10 kilograms. I think that's like 5 pounds in that time of writing, which had never happened before, because literally my body was releasing. I did nothing different in terms of food, movement, nothing, but I wrote. And I literally wrote my story out of me, and my body lightened and was released from that. And that book, Dancing with Dragons, is pretty raw. I didn't go through and edit much afterwards. And like I said, I didn't have the intention that that was going to be out there for people in a public space, but it was something I needed to do for me. And once it was created and I started sharing with a couple of people, they were like, you need to share this, you know, this. One friend of mine actually said, who are you to hold on to this story when others could benefit from it? And I was like, that was a bit harsh, you know. But again, that tapped into that deep part of me that says, how am I in service to others? And if I create something that can be in service to others, great. And I've had people that have read it. This one woman blew me away. She came up, and I'd never met her before, but she found me. She came up with that book, Dancing with Dragons, and there were highlights all through it. And she said she'd been reading it and just going deep and taking baths while she was reading it. And it had helped her unlock a whole heap of trauma and grief and abuse that had happened in her life. And she'd just been, and I was like, whoa, all right, great. You know, that wasn't what I was actually talking about, I don't think, in that way, but we just operate through our own lenses, right? So if we read something that attunes to us, we're going to go through, our own stuff's going to come out regardless. This whatever we're interacting with is just the trigger for that. So in integration, I'd say writing my story out was a bigger piece of integration and a bigger picture, and super helpful. And the much longer term integration, you know, it comes each time I share the story, each time I have the conversation. Then of course, when the feedback comes from others, you know, that's part of the validation of that. So I'm one of those people that see integration as a lifelong process. I see us as artworks in a lifetime, like we constantly change and evolve, and we're not static at all. And so those experiences can come and punctuate, but we don't even know when they might arise again in some other way, shape, or form, right? Because again, we're complex, and our body just holds amazing wisdom, and often it will bring things forward where it'd be like, hey, it's time in your life to check this out now. And I was like, I thought I was done with that a long time ago, but here it is again. So yeah, integration, great conversation, Nicole. Yeah.
Oh, that's I mean, actually that could, you know, that's something that is important to me, you know, as also a near-death experiencer, and to talk about that aspect, because it's something that the people that I've had a near-death experience or a spiritually transformative experience, that it's something that lives within you, that it builds upon, it's still a part of you, and you're still trying to, it's never like, oh, I'm done with that. So that you're still trying to move through. And Nicole, you have totally sold me on me finishing my darn book that I've been
Get it done.
especially because the 5 pounds lost, that alone there told me I'm finishing my book. And you know, and it's funny because you're right, if it can also help other people and the healing process, because I have some abuse in mine, so that actually you might not have been realizing you were talking to me. You know how spirit just comes through and you just da-da-da, you know, but you were talking to me. And so thank you for that. Now tell people, I want, you know, we're kind of at the end here. I wanted people to know how they can get a hold of you, and also the book you were talking about, and also the power, what is it? The Power of the Notes book?
The Power of Notes, Non-Ordinary Transcendent Experiences.
And because you actually have you can get it for free. You can tell them how to get it for free. So
yeah, I'll pop all of those links below wherever this video is posted.
Yeah, I will. I will post the definitely with this. Right now I have, you can, I could go ahead and just say you could, Nicole's website is Dr. Nicole Gruel, GRUEL.com. And then I will also post here the Power of Notes book. It's where you can get a free copy. And then also her Agents Are Awesome. And tell us the total of how many, you have a couple books out.
Yeah, there's 3 in total right now. So Dancing with Dragons was the first. And I found that once that stuff was cleared from me, a second project popped through straight away, which was far lighter and more fun. That one was called Women of the Wise Earth.
Ooh.
And that was a collaboration with 33 women who are amazing women in my local area, healers, mothers, naturopaths, yoga teachers, artists, dancers, and we all just got together and we went to 7 sacred sites in nature. And I had a little dictaphone and we had a little wise owl and we had a talking stick, and we just let nature and experience speak through us as women in a really deep space. And I had no idea what was going to happen in any of those. And the first one that we did, I was completely blown away. And I thought we should end it here because that was the most amazing gathering ever. And the second and third can't be any better than this. And each one was its own unique flavor and gorgeous. So Women of the Wise Earth, it's like when you get those card sets that you go through and you pick one out for the day. This is a book where you can kind of open at any different point and let that speak to you. That was a lot of fun. And the more recent one is The Power of Notes, how non-ordinary transcendent experiences transform the way we live, love, and lead. And that is a very reader-friendly version of my 600-something page doctoral dissertation, which no one's ever going to read, and I don't blame you for not doing that. But this is a friendly version to say, here are some people's stories. Here's why these experiences are amazing and important. Here's why we should celebrate them. Here are some practical tools in how you can start understanding your experiences yourself and also how you can apply them in the world. And I mean, mind you, it's a short reader-friendly book, so we're not going to get too deep into it, but that's, you know, it's a doorway to a conversation to help validate. That's the really big point. You're not crazy. You're not nuts. Something incredible is going on, and that's beautiful and okay. And you're not alone. There are many people that understand you. And so if you want more of those people, then you can, and you're on Facebook, you can come along and join us in Agents of Awesome. We're like 600 and something counting.
Wow.
A lot of incredible people there. And we do have the question prompts. You know, I've been not as active recently with the lives, but the whole purpose there and my goal is for people really to connect with each other. Because again, amazing, you know, even Jeff that's on the call here is doing some incredible things in his part of the work. So each person just has these incredible things to share, and to stay connected to your magic, you know, and we need each other as community. Yes. It can get pretty isolating sometimes, particularly if you've walked a path of, you know, expanded consciousness and active engagement in the world, and you care deeply about things, and maybe there are folks around you who don't quite get it, or you're a bit too intense for them, or they just can't keep up, or, you know, whatever that might be. So we need each other, particularly the visionaries and the sensitives, and all of that, to know that we're all out there, to stay and remember that so many good things are happening. The news is not the only news that's happening in the world. There are so many incredible things taking place right now, and that we collectively have the power to co-create something incredible together, but we got to be in it together.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm with you. I'm voting for you, and you're the one. That sounds great. No, you know what? Look, all this whatever's going on that, you know, that some people are negative, I can disagree with that, and I can say, you know, I want a better world. And I want to play a game with people that want a utopia and a better world instead of something that whatever that other perspective is. So I'm totally with you. Now, look, I really personally think that you need to have, I don't know, I'm not going to say what it is, but I think it would be so cool to have a book on maybe like wisdom of the samurai, and go through wisdom of the spiritual samurai. Oh yeah, girl, that's just totally right there waiting to happen. Oh yeah, you know it is. And then you can have fun with that. You could have so much fun, and it could be just a neat little nugget, like a book of nuggets. So, and then you could pull your ancestry in with that, because that's
Thank
really
you for that
amazing.
Delicious seed. Thank
yes,
you.
and I'm just telling you, I feel that for you. Now, it's your choice, of course, but it's like Mission Impossible if you want to take that mission. But it does, and it would be honoring your past, you know, too, and it would be honoring you. So, well, you're a fantastic guest. I was so pumped to have you tonight. I just appreciate your time so much. And again, you all know how to get in touch with Dr. Nicole Gruel. That's dr.com. And then I will provide the links and everything for you to get a hold of. If you want to do more I'm Charlotte, we do this at least once a month, and you can go to Meetup and just hit IANDS Charlotte, and then we will have these free. Now, next time, we have another Australian person from Brisbane, and that would be Cheryl Gottschall, and she'll be talking about
fun.
I know, she's cool. Near-death experiences, but with the abductees and the whole alien encounter and how they cross over. I'm really interested about that. Like, how does that, but this is like 30 some years of research. And I know she's a friend of yours, Nicole, and a really interesting lady who's very educated on this topic. So that's going to be a unique one. You're welcome to join us. That's going to be, actually, we always meet the second weekend of every month. And so that'll be in August. And I will have that. I think we're going to do that on a Saturday. So, which will be Sunday Australian time, Sunday morning.
Great.
Australian
Cheryl,
time.
you guys will have a lot of fun with her. She's great.
Oh yeah, very fascinating. I mean, that's going to really expand our minds right there. So look, thank everyone for being here. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless you. Nicole, just keep spreading the love. I mean, you're just awesome. I can't say enough. I'm like a fan. Rah, rah, rah. I mean, I think you're fantastic.
I love you too.
Yeah. Okay, love you. And also, if you need an Agents of Awesome in the U.S., I raise my hand. I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
We'll do this thing internationally. Okay, we'll make this love spread.
We want this global. Agents of Awesome, arise.
Exactly. I love it. We're all superheroes, and we can all be our own little source of magic. So look, God bless everybody. Thank you for joining tonight. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you, Nicole.